I never imagined one lazy Sunday would change everything. Ethan and I had been married for 5 years. From the outside, our life looked ideal. Stable jobs, a cozy home, and a predictable routine. Predictable was the perfect word for Ethan. Dependable. Loyal. A man of structure and systems. I used to find comfort in that. But over time, that comfort turned into silence, and that silence grew louder than any argument ever could. We hadn't been intimate in months, unless you count quick kisses goodbye and shoulder brushes while folding laundry. Conversations died mid-sentence. He worked late, buried himself in spreadsheets, and rarely noticed when I wore something new or changed my hair. I began feeling invisible in my own home, like a placeholder in someone else's schedule. When Ethan told me his brother Liam would be staying the weekend with us at the family cabin, I barely reacted. I remembered Liam as loud, impulsive, and charming in a way that always made Ethan roll his eyes. They hadn't spoken much in the last few years. Something about a falling out over money or responsibility. Ethan never went into detail. Liam arrived Friday night with a bag slung over his shoulder and that same crooked smile I remembered. He gave me a long hug. "Still beautiful as ever," he said, not even pretending it was a casual greeting. Ethan brushed it off with a chuckle, but I felt the way Liam's eyes lingered. Saturday morning passed with small talk and coffee. Ethan spent half the day glued to his laptop, claiming he had urgent reports to send. Liam and I ended up walking along the nearby trail, just the two of us. We laughed about old stories, about Ethan's obsession with labels and laundry cycles. There was a lightness to it, innocent on the surface. But something flickered underneath. Liam was nothing like Ethan. He listened without checking his phone. He asked questions and remembered the answers. He noticed the chipped nail polish on my fingers and joked about it, and it startled me how long it had been since someone paid that kind of attention. At one point, I tripped slightly on a rock, and he grabbed my arm to steady me. We laughed, but his hand stayed there for a second longer than it should have. Neither of us moved. My pulse spiked. I made a joke, and we kept walking, but the air had changed. That night, after dinner, Ethan retreated to the bedroom, saying he had an early video call to prepare for. Liam and I stayed up with a bottle of wine and a deck of cards. The conversation deepened. He asked me if I was happy. I didn't know how to answer. He told me he noticed the distance between Ethan and me. I said marriage was hard work, and he said love shouldn't feel like a job. I laughed, maybe too bitterly. Then the silence crept in. The kind that doesn't ask to be filled. It demands it. He looked at me, and I looked back. No words. Just that electric stillness. Then, slowly, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. My breath caught. I didn't move away. His hand lingered at my jaw. I leaned in just slightly, and we kissed. It was soft, hesitant, full of questions neither of us dared to say out loud. Then I pulled back. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I can't," I whispered. I didn't wait for him to respond. I went straight to the bedroom and climbed under the covers next to Ethan, who was already asleep. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I stared at the ceiling, every inch of me awake and on fire. What had I just done? A kiss. Just a kiss. But not just. It felt like a line had been crossed, and there was no way to go back. I lay there next to my husband, barely breathing, guilt clawing at my throat. Ethan shifted in his sleep and reached for me instinctively. His arm draped across my waist. I almost cried, not because it was sweet, but because it was automatic. Habitual. Like muscle memory, not affection. The next morning, I avoided Liam's eyes over breakfast. Ethan was talking about work again, something about a new client and needing to leave the cabin early the next day. I nodded and smiled in the right places. But I wasn't really there. I was trapped between two men, one who barely saw me and one who saw too much. I found myself staring at Liam when he wasn't looking, wondering what he was thinking, wondering if he would bring up the kiss. He didn't. He was casual, maybe too casual, like nothing had happened. But the way he glanced at me when Ethan wasn't looking told me he remembered every second of it. So did I. By the end of the day, I felt like a stranger in my own skin. I told myself it was just a moment.
A mistake.
A lapse in judgment caused by loneliness and wine and nostalgia. I told myself a lot of things, but none of them made the guilt go away. And yet, underneath all that shame, there was something else. A small, dangerous thrill I couldn't ignore. Not because of what happened, but because of what might happen next. Ethan left early the next morning for a video meeting in town, giving me and Liam the day to ourselves. I told myself I'd keep my distance, pretend the kiss never happened. But pretending felt impossible when every glance felt loaded and every silence screamed. We spent the morning doing mundane things, cleaning, reading, half-watching an old movie. Ethan texted occasionally, but it was all logistics and updates. No, I miss you. No warmth. Just checklists. I felt more like a roommate than a wife. Liam broke the quiet around noon. You regretting it? He asked without looking up from his coffee. I didn't answer right away. I don't know what to regret, I finally said. It was just a kiss. He raised an eyebrow. It didn't feel like just a kiss. I didn't argue because he was right. I busied myself in the kitchen to change the subject, but his words followed me like a shadow. That night, the rain started.
Hard.
Thunder echoed through the trees, and the signal cut out. No internet, no distractions. Ethan messaged to say he'd be stuck in town overnight. A fallen tree blocked the road. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Liam poured 2 glasses of wine again. I accepted it without a word. Neither of us brought up the storm or Ethan. We talked about anything else. Childhood memories. Music. How different our lives turned out. He asked me when I last felt excited. I didn't have an answer. When he spoke next, his voice dropped. You know what I remember most about you? I shook my head. You always used to laugh with your whole face. You haven't done that in years. I laughed then, almost on cue. He smiled like he'd proven his point. And just like before, the tension built slowly, but with precision. This time, when we kissed, there was no hesitation. It was urgent, raw, impossible to stop. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But instead, I let it happen. I wanted to feel wanted. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be touched like that. We crossed a line, fully and completely. No more excuses. Afterward, we didn't speak for a while. Just the sound of rain and our breathing. I wrapped myself in a blanket, curled up on the couch, overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Liam sat next to me but didn't reach out. Maybe he was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. My phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Wish I was there. Love you. The words hit me like a punch. I stared at the screen, then locked it without replying. My stomach twisted. What had I done? Liam finally broke the silence. Was this just about the loneliness? I turned toward him. It wasn't just anything, I said. But it can't keep happening. He nodded slowly, but his expression was unreadable. I'm not going to apologize for how I feel, he said. I've had feelings for you since long before Ethan put a ring on your finger.
I didn't know how to process that.
I asked why he never said anything. He shrugged. Because you were his. Because I thought I could ignore it. But you're not just his anymore, are you? His words were both a statement and a question. I didn't answer either. The next morning, I avoided him again. I cleaned more than necessary. Organized drawers. Kept myself busy while he stayed quiet. I finally asked, Are you going to tell him? He looked hurt. Do you think I want to destroy him?
I didn't respond.
Because whatever I thought I already had. When Ethan returned that evening, the air felt heavier. He hugged me like everything was normal. Asked about the power, the storm, the fireplace. I nodded and played along. Liam barely spoke to him. Ethan didn't notice. Or pretended not to. That night, Ethan suggested we talk about trying for a baby. The words didn't sink in right away. I just stared at him. He smiled and said he'd been thinking about it for a while. That maybe it would bring us closer. I felt sick. I excused myself and locked the bathroom door, staring into the mirror like I didn't recognize the person in it. Back in bed, Ethan kissed my shoulder. You okay? He asked. I lied. Said I was tired. He kissed me again and turned off the light. Lying there in the dark, I tried to remember who I was before this. Before the silence, the kiss, the storm. I thought of Liam's words, Ethan's message, the taste of guilt sitting in my throat. I had wanted connection. Instead, I had chaos. And no matter which direction I turned, someone was going to get hurt. The truth sat just beneath the surface, pressing against my skin. I wasn't sure how long I could keep it hidden, but I wasn't ready to let it out either. Not yet. Ethan left for work early the next morning, full of plans and optimism about our future. He kissed me before he left, told me to think about what he said. The baby conversation. I nodded without meeting his eyes. The door shut behind him, and I stood there in the quiet, already suffocating under the weight of the lie. Liam was still at the cabin. I found him on the back porch, sipping coffee like nothing had changed. I joined him without a word. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was sharp. He looked at me, but I couldn't look back. "So, what now?" he asked. I shrugged. "Nothing. It didn't happen."
He scoffed.
"It did." I snapped. "But it shouldn't have." He set his mug down. "But it did."
Because you wanted it.
"You're not some helpless victim in this." I flinched. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. I wasn't innocent. I had choices. And I made them. I wanted to feel wanted, seen, touched. I let that one take over. I told him it was over. That whatever happened, it couldn't happen again. That it was a mistake. He laughed once, dry and bitter. "It didn't feel like a mistake when you kissed me back. Or when you pulled me into your bed." His voice cracked a little, and I hated that he sounded hurt. I didn't answer. I just went inside and shut the door behind me. The hours dragged. I started packing early, trying to act normal, trying to be the version of myself Ethan expected to come home. But I couldn't shake the memory of Liam's mouth, his hands, the look on his face when I told him it meant nothing. By the time Ethan came home, I had forced a smile back onto my face. He kissed my cheek, told me he missed me. I mumbled something vague, and went to unpack. He didn't notice the tremble in my hands. Or he ignored it. That night, he talked more than usual. He said he felt a shift between us, that the trip had given him perspective. He wanted to try again, fully. He wanted to plan a future together. He reached for me in bed, and I let him. I closed my eyes and tried to stay present, but all I felt was shame. Every touch reminded me of what I'd done. The next few days passed in a blur. I avoided Liam's texts. He sent one message. "Tell him. Or I will." I stared at it for hours. He didn't follow up. He didn't have to. I finally asked Ethan one night if he ever doubted us. He smiled. Not once. Even when things got rough, I knew we'd find our way back. I felt like I was drowning. Every word from him made it worse. He loved me. He trusted me. And I'd betrayed him in the worst possible way. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I told him we needed to talk. He set his phone down, concerned. I started slow, how lonely I'd been, how distant we'd become. He listened, nodding, holding my hand. I didn't deserve that kindness. Then I said it. I told him I had cheated, that it wasn't ongoing, that it happened at the cabin, that it was Liam.
He didn't speak for a long time.
Just stared at me like I was a stranger. I tried to keep going, explaining the emotions, the mistakes, the confusion. He stood up and walked out of the room. Just left. No shouting. No slamming doors. Nothing. I sat there, frozen. Hours passed. He didn't come back. I finally found him in the car, engine off, staring at the driveway. His eyes were red. When I opened the door, he didn't look at me. "I can't look at you right now," he said. I nodded and shut the door again. He left the next morning. Said he needed time. Said not to call him.
I didn't argue.
I just let him go. Liam reached out again. He asked if I was okay. I didn't respond. I didn't know what okay even looked like anymore. Everything was fractured. My marriage, my self-respect, my sense of who I was. Weeks passed. The silence stretched. Ethan filed for divorce.
He didn't want to talk.
No therapy, no fixing, just distance.
Clean break.
Liam showed up at my apartment one evening unannounced. He asked if I hated him. I said no, but I didn't love him either. He asked if what happened meant anything. I said it did. And it didn't. It was real, but it wasn't right. He nodded, told me he was leaving the city. Said he didn't want to keep being a reminder of my worst moment. I didn't stop him. After he left, the quiet became a constant. No husband. No affair. No distractions. Just me. And every night I replayed it.
The kiss.
The choices. The look on Ethan's face when I told him. I didn't regret feeling desired. I regretted needing someone else to feel it. I used to think love was about loyalty. Then I thought it was about passion. Now I'm not sure I know what it is at all. All I know is that I broke something I can't fix. And I'll have to live with that. Months passed. Life settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar, but consistent. I moved into a smaller place downtown, close to work, far from memory. Ethan and I had no contact. The divorce was finalized quietly, paperwork exchanged through lawyers, no courtrooms or dramatics, just a quiet end to something that once held so much promise. I saw Liam once in a grocery store 2 towns over. He didn't see me. Or if he did, he chose not to. He looked thinner, older somehow. I watched him walk past the shelves, grab a carton of milk, glance at his phone. Ordinary movements from someone who'd once flipped my world inside out. I didn't approach him. There was nothing left to say. People asked what happened.
Friends. Colleagues.
I gave them careful versions of the truth, vague references to growing apart, different directions, and time we needed for ourselves. No one pressed too hard. People rarely want the full story, especially when it's messy. I kept busy, took up running, lost weight, filled my evenings with audiobooks and silence. It became easier not to think about what I'd done. Until I ran into Ethan's sister at a coffee shop. She hugged me too tightly. Her eyes scanned my face like she was searching for an apology or an explanation. He still doesn't talk about it, she said, stirring her drink. Just packed it away, like a box in the attic. I nodded, unsure what else to offer. She sighed. He loved you, you know. Fully. Even when you didn't give him anything back. That night, I broke. All the restraint and numbness cracked open. I sobbed into my pillow like I had the night after I confessed. Guilt doesn't disappear. It just waits until you're quiet enough to hear it again. I wondered if Ethan would ever love again. If he would let someone close enough to trust. If I'd ruined that possibility for him. And then I wondered the same about myself. Could I love again without destroying something in the process? Therapy helped in pieces. At first, I went because I didn't know what else to do. But over time, I stopped talking about Ethan and Liam. I started talking about myself. About how I'd built my identity around being chosen, needed, validated. About how I equated attention with love. It didn't excuse anything. But it gave shape to a mess I hadn't understood. One session, my therapist asked, "Do you think you were lonely or just unseen?" The question stayed with me for days. The answer was both. But the more painful truth was that I'd also stopped seeing myself. There were moments of quiet healing. A Sunday morning where the sunlight hit the window just right. A stranger at a bookstore complimenting my jacket. A playlist that made me cry in the best way. Small, human things that reminded me I wasn't broken beyond repair. I deleted the photos eventually. Not out of spite or closure, just readiness. The wedding albums, the vacations, the selfies with fake smiles. I put them in a digital folder, backed it up, and never opened it again. Some memories aren't meant to be erased, only stored out of reach. Occasionally, I thought about reaching out to Ethan, writing a letter. Not to rekindle anything, just to apologize without expectation. I drafted it more than once, but never sent it. The truth is, some forgiveness isn't ours to claim. Sometimes we don't get to be redeemed in someone else's story. I never saw Liam again. I wondered where he ended up. If he found someone. If he ever felt guilty. I stopped replaying what happened between us. Not because it didn't matter, but because I knew exactly why it happened, and knowing that was enough. A year passed. Then, too, I got promoted at work. Traveled alone for the first time. Had short relationships. all of which ended quietly. I stopped chasing butterflies. I started chasing peace. One day, out of nowhere, I ran into Ethan in a bookstore. He was standing in front of the travel section, holding a guide to Italy. I froze. He saw me and gave a small, polite smile. The kind you give a stranger you recognize from a dream. We spoke briefly. Polite, detached. He looked good. Healthier. His laugh still started in his chest. I didn't bring up the past. Neither did he. We talked like two people who once shared a universe, and now just shared a memory. As he turned to leave, he hesitated. "I hope you're okay," he said. I nodded. "I am," I said. And I meant it. He walked away, and I didn't follow. I stood there for a long time, hand resting on a book I wasn't reading, breathing deeply. That night, I wrote in my journal, I was the villain in his story, but maybe I can be the hero in mine. And that was enough.